Tonight we're in Folkestone and this is Question Time. And welcome to you, whether you're with us by television or radio or in our audience here, and of course to our panel. Tonight, the Leader of the House of Commons, one of 4 cabinet ministers campaigning to leave the EU, Chris Grayling. Labour's shadow Foreign Secretary supporting Remain, Hilary Benn. The Leader of UKIP, Nigel Farage. The Daily Telegraph columnist and a Brexiter, Allison Pearson. And the comedian campaigning to remain in the EU, Izzard. And remember, of course, you've got Facebook, Twitter, or texting 83981 if you want to comment on what's said here this evening. Matt Dickinson has our first question, please. Matt.
Yesterday, William Hague said that voters should not make their decision in the referendum on the basis of controlling immigration. Do you agree? William
Hague made this statement yesterday. Nigel Farage, was he right?
Extraordinary, isn't it? This was the Hague who, of course, was the great Eurosceptic leader of the Conservative Party, who fought against the euro, who railed against European integration and appears to have really rather sold out. Look, whichever way you cut this, immigration is the #1 issue in British politics. It has been for some years. The opinion polls are astonishing. 77% of the British public want cuts to the numbers coming into Britain, and over half the voters want a reduction to near zero. So people are very upset, they're very unhappy, they're seeing the impact on local schools, they're seeing the impact on GP services, they're seeing the impact on housing or the inability of young people to get on the housing ladder. So that's why it's the #1 issue. And I think that the reason in this referendum why we have to talk about this is all the while, that, which is a British passport, or should be, but the first 2 words on it are European Union, that is available to 508 million people. And any of those people, if they wish, can come to this country. We have no control. The only way we get control is to vote to leave the European Union. And I think William Hague shows he's just completely lost touch with where the British public are on this issue.
Okay.
In my mind, this is the issue that will decide the referendum.
And that's why you said it didn't matter if we weren't slightly richer by leaving, as long as we cut immigration.
What I said was this. There are reports that say that we're better off with mass immigration. There are some reports that say we're slightly worse off economically with mass immigration. But to me, there's an issue called the quality of life. And I think that matters more than money. It's about thinking our kids and grandkids can have what we've had in terms of access to local healthcare, in terms of our kids getting into local primary schools, in terms of our overall quality of life. And that, David, I think, matters more than GDP rising by 1% per annum.
No doubt we'll do this. Izzard.
Well, between 2001 and 2011, EU migrants put in 20 billion into the EU economy. They put more in than they take out. I know people are concerned about immigration, but we've got to look at the facts. These facts are in front of us. I mean, Sarah Wollaston, she exited the Brexit campaign today because she said that the figures that are coming out from the Brexit side are coming out false. And she said, and she's GP, she said, like the NHS, a lot of information was stoked up about the NHS, and she said it's not true, it isn't true. So she has actually left the campaign and she's joined the Remain side. There are skeptics, Eurosceptics, that are joining the Remain side, even though they're still skeptical, because they see the economic problems of pulling out. We pull out, we are going to go into recession. Brexit is almost an anagram of recession. If you put 2 S's into the word Brexit, it's Brexession. They almost designed it that way.
What's that got to do with immigration, Eddie? Wasn't that the question?
Well, no, the point is immigration. If we pull out, then we become Norway. Norway still has to have the free movement of people in. So we become Norway, or are we going to become Albania? If we become Albania, the Prime Minister of Albania wants to join the EU, or we become Canada. The point is, you are from an immigrant family, and you're married to an immigrant. Why are you so against immigration when it worked?
Because we have to control it. We have to control it. Hang on.
You grew up. You're French Protestant from one side, you're German from the other side. You should be the champion.
Well, I
You've been a champion of people who are immigrants coming in. Look what they did. They got it to your situation.
Why do you want to stop people from the Commonwealth coming in? Because we have an open door to Southern...
Why do you want to stop people coming in from countries like from
Because I want to have an Australian-style point system where we get the right people coming to Britain in the right numbers.
Nigel, you told your followers to bully people to vote for you. This is not the right attitude for you to have.
If we go on with current levels of immigration...
You've got to answer your own personal situation here.
Our population will be 80 million by 2040.
All right.
How are we going to cope?
All right, I'm going to...
How are we going to cope?
There are three other people at the table. I'm going to go to one of them. Hilary Benn, your turn.
All right, Hilary Benn. In 25 years' time.
Hilary Benn, your turn.
That's the question.
I'm the son of an immigrant. Now, Nigel, you say that you want an Australian-style point system.
Yes.
What has it done in Australia? It's increased immigration. Now, let's tell each other the truth. It's a very important issue, and you're right that people have concerns, and there are pressures in particular communities. But the truth is, there will continue to be immigration, whether we remain in the European Union or leave the European Union.
But why can't you make your decision on the basis of controlling immigration, which is what the question I was asking?
To come to that directly, I don't think it's wise to make your decision just on that basis for this reason. The price we pay for leaving will be to damage our economy. It's very rare to get so many economists to reach agreement, 9 out of 10, to get all of the surveys of business opinion. The IMF, the OECD, the World Bank, the Governor of the Bank of England. Now, if you think they're all wrong, you have to be pretty confident that they're all wrong. How does damaging our economy, making life more difficult for people, putting up prices if the pound falls, how is that going to help deal with the problem of immigration? It isn't. And I make one other point. 1 in 5 of our care workers in this country come from outside the United Kingdom. Outside the United Kingdom. We have a demographic time bomb. More of us are getting older. We're going to need care. So that is why we will continue to need immigration. And what most people would say is, as long as people come here, they work, they pay their taxes, and Eddie is absolutely right, they contribute more into our economy than they take out. You know what that money goes on? Helping to pay for our schools and our NHS.
OK, let's hear from some... I'll come to you, Chris, next. Yes, in the third row there.
I don't think anyone's putting into question that immigrants have had a fantastic, had a great impact on the economy, but there has to be a limit at some point. If you're going to leave that to the chance and to the decisions of the European Commission, essentially, and the decisions to the discretion of the people from those countries, you could have an unsustainable model, essentially. The only way to gain control of our borders again is to leave the European Union.
Do you think that's the most... You see, William Hague was saying that isn't the issue to decide on. Do you think it is the issue to decide on for you?
I wouldn't say it's the main issue. The main issue is our democracy, but it is an issue nevertheless, and I think it's wrong to undermine people's concerns about it because communities have been affected by it.
OK.
If communities are worried...
sorry, the woman there, yes.
The problem is with the Out campaign as a whole. As a young person, I'm just seeing like this scaremongering about immigrants and why I should be voting Leave because of that. Are there any other reasons why, or is it all just solely on this problem of immigration, which personally I haven't experienced?
Chris Grayling, you answer the Hague, could you?
No, it's not entirely about immigration. It's about the future of our democracy. It's about our trading relationships around the world. It's about being part of a continent and a union that is being left behind economically. It's an ever smaller part of the world economy. There are opportunities out there we're not taking part in, we're not taking advantage of. But it is going to be a key part of the decision-making. And why it matters to you is this. There are many, many people who come to the United Kingdom who play a big role in our country. But if we carry on bringing to this country every year the equivalent of a city the size of Newcastle upon Tyne, for all of us who live in the South East, I live in the South East too, it is going to change the nature of the communities in which we live. It's going to become more built up. It's going to become more congested. There are going to be more pressures on our public services. And if that's going to happen, and if we're going to decide that's the right thing for our economy, I think at the very least you should have a say. And right now, we as your elected politicians have no ability to set limits on the number of people who come and live and work here. And the reason it makes a difference to you, you're going to want somewhere to live in the future, you're going to want to move up the housing ladder. The more people there are here, the more challenging it is for us to provide housing for all the people who are here already, to provide opportunities for all the people who are here
Except that they put 20 billion into the UK economy. Yeah.
But Chris Grayling, there's an interesting point here. Your party said they would reduce immigration to tens of thousands, maximum, therefore 100,000. And then you say you can't control EU immigration. 184,000 people are coming from outside the EU. So even on the bit you can control, you've done nothing to bring the numbers down. Why is that?
And we need to do more, and we just
no,
passed...
But why haven't you done it? The people are asking... You're saying leave the EU, that will solve that bit of the immigration, but what about the 184,000 that you've had years to put right and you haven't?
There's a job of work to do. We have just passed another immigration act that tightens up our system
further. So you have failed.
Well, we've clearly got more to do.
So why should anyone believe that you're going to succeed by leaving the EU if you can't get the bit you can control right?
Because we have just... We've just passed an immigration act that will tighten up the system for people from outside the European Union. We can't do that for people inside the European Union. We cannot even say that people who come and live and work in the United Kingdom should have a job before they come here. That is illegal under European law. Surely we should have a say. Surely we should be able to set some limits. Isn't that what being a democracy is all about?
If we do that, do we become Norway?
Let's hear from Alison. I'll come to you in a minute. The man there in the 1, 2, 3, 4th row there, you.
I don't think it's an issue. I think immigration can be the biggest issue of this debate simply because it affects so many other things. We have, for example, our green spaces seem to be disappearing as we go on, our forests. It seems this is also not just an economic issue, but an environmental one as well, and I'd like to hear a bit more about whether we can actually keep a sustainable population, sustainable cities, while we have we're not hitting the immigration targets.
If we go into recession...
hold on, we'll keep that one from them. The woman up there on the right.
I think that it's quite right. We do need the immigrants. They make a good contribution to us, but also I think that there's no reason why we shouldn't have immigration, obviously, if we leave the EU, because... we can then have the people that we need and the people that we want, and I do think we would have more of a say in it. But there's no way... I don't think very many people, if any, are saying that we don't want any. Okay. You know, we need them, we want them.
Allison Pearson.
I don't think anyone's saying we don't want any. We had 330,000 last year, and the Treasury's own predictions are that in 14 years' time it'll be another 3.2 million. These are vast figures. And one thing I really was offended by that William Hague said, and I feel some of these Remainers, very lofty, quite complacent and arrogant, let's not let these, you know, the little people bother us, let's think globally. He used the phrase, parochial concerns. Don't vote on parochial concerns. So let's still think of some parochial concerns about in my village. Can you get your child into the local primary school? Can you get the sibling of your child into the same primary school so you don't waste 20 minutes commuting on your working day to another school?
Isn't that because there was a recession in 2008 and then austerity came in?
I haven't finished. I'm sorry, OK?
Well, I thought this was
We've had an awful lot of men speaking. We had a lot of male voices, and I'm going to speak now. So this is about families and mothers and children, and half of all maternity units in England have closed their doors in the last 2 years for up to 3 days because the pressure on midwives and on the service in general is dreadful. We had some figures out this week about the NHS, which were buried because of Sarah Wollaston's defection, but waiting times have gone up. So everywhere we look, we have to create, by 2024, 900,000 school places. Lots of children can't get into their first choice of secondary school or even their third choice of secondary school. So this is not about keeping foreigners out. This is about our country. How many people can we sustain and maintain the quality of life? I just want to finish with one thing.
Be quick, because you made quite a long statement.
Former Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs said, if you have a well-integrated country, it feels like a home. He said, if you have too many people coming in, he said, it feels like a hotel. No. On 23rd of June, we have to decide, is this our home or is it a hotel?
It is.
Okay.
I just want to say to the people, folks, and the people of Britain, let us not forget a recession happened in 2008, a subprime capitalist recession. It came in, the government, the Tory government decided to do austerity. Austerity all across the country. Don't let's make the EU a scapegoat where we just lash out at the EU. There was a recession on, and austerity is your policy, and that's why people are hurting. The Secretary-General of the TUC and all the major unions are saying, let's stay in the European Union. And for God's sake, isn't it about humanity? We're trying to move forward in humanity. We're trying to head towards a world where everyone has a fair chance. The United Kingdom came together, and that's what we're trying to do in the European Union. Let's head forward, not backwards.
Yeah, the biggest problem I find is we have a housing deficit. You know, we can't build enough houses. A government in a term will set a figure. We can't reach it. We're not getting anywhere near it. And we're talking about the mass immigration that's coming forward, which we shouldn't be looking at. We should be looking at actually housing some of our former veterans, for example, for one example. But we've got many families that are looking for property. There's just not enough. So, yes, immigration is a good thing, but mass immigration is not a good thing. And an Australian-style point system would be the fix of this country.
So you're with Brexit. What about the woman with spectacles in the middle? Hold on, Nigel. Hold on, Nigel. Hold on, Nigel. Hold on. Sure. The woman with spectacles there. I'll come to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with Eddie. The issues around housing and health and the other systems aren't about immigration.
They are.
People are resources. They're not.
Right, let her voice be heard. Let her voice be heard. Sorry, you'll have to start your sentence again because everybody shouted you down and they're not going to. Go on.
There are much more complicated reasons why those systems are breaking down. A deliberate attempt by the Tory government to break down those systems because it's part of the social welfare system. And it's an easy scapegoat to break it, to blame immigrants.
Because I think it's a really important point, and Eddie has just said it. Let's ask ourselves the question, what is austerity? Austerity is a simple concept. It's living within your means. We cannot borrow and borrow and borrow in perpetuity into the future and pass those debts to our children.
Rich people caused the subprime market meltdown. Poorer people having to pay for it.
I'm sorry.
All right, Nigel, on the housing point.
We're in a very odd place with this. The housing crisis has nothing to do with what happened to the banks back in 2008. And it does have to do with demand and supply in a marketplace. Think about this. At the moment, we have to build one new house every 4 minutes, night and day, just to cope with current levels of immigration. I would say that is wholly unsustainable, and what we need to do is get the net figures coming into Britain back to an acceptable number so that our young people have got a chance of getting on the housing ladder.
Presumably, I'll come to you, Hilary. But, Nigel, presumably the immediate effect, if Britain voted Brexit, would be a rush of EU people coming here to get in the 2 years before Brexit had taken place.
That will depend how the British government handles all of this.
Well, you can't stop it if you're in the EU, can you?
There are two factors. One is, if we say the door's closing in X number of months, there could be a flood. The other is, the Eurozone crisis is coming back in July of this year. The third Greek bailout's on the agenda. And I fear, actually, economic collapse in the Mediterranean could lead
We're going to go into recession. So the governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, says we'll most probably go into recession.
Well, I tell you what, luckily, Eddie, we didn't listen to you. We didn't join the euro. Otherwise, we'd be totally skipped, wouldn't we?
Mark Carney
totally skipped.
The governor of the Bank of England, you're going to ignore. Nigel, you still haven't explained why you, as an immigrant family, are so anti-immigration.
I didn't think you...
Everyone here would like to hear, the whole of the country would like to hear.
Because we want to control it.
I think we should make you change seats if you go on like this. Now, look,
you put a secretary.
I know. But I'm going to come to Hilary Benn.
No one's fighting here. No one's actually getting out guns and arms. That's what the EU was set up to do, to make sure no one...
Nigel, I want you just to address this. You said that if a vote for Brexit happened, there would be a 2-year period when people could flood in. I remember you talking about when Poles flooded in, when Poland was admitted to the EU. No, hold on a second. So it could be argued that actually you would have a steadier rate, a more controlled rate of immigration into Britain by remaining in the EU and simply relying on the spread of growth in the EU for it not to overwhelm this country in the way that you say it will. Whereas Brexit might have the exact opposite effect.
Let's just get one point clear. As members of the European Union, there is no control whatsoever over the numbers that come from the European Union. And that, I think, is why Mr Cameron is getting so ratty in this campaign.
But you're a member for another 2 years, aren't you?
He was elected saying he'd reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year. As an EU member, we have no control.
Okay.
That's the point.
Hilary Benn.
Now, look,
all right, we'll come to the economy. I'm going to come to the economy.
Ever an answer? You're just going to politically avoid it?
Probably. Hilary Benn.
Because we want to control. Avoid the vote. Your grandchildren, they didn't stop them coming in.
Right. Hilary Benn.
Well, I think there's a bit of a problem controlling the panel. But anyway, look, the point is this. What nobody, I think, understands is, I mean, you talk, Alison, about the pressures, but how does damaging the British economy help us? Well, now, Nigel, you say, come on. A moment ago, you said, well, if the price we pay is a bit less in GDP...
Yes.
That's what you said.
Because GDP per capita matters, Hilary, not GDP as a whole.
Because that's what you said. Yes. Now, you mentioned the 2 years. David, your question to Nigel was about the 2 years. If we vote to leave, the clock starts ticking on 2 years. If we haven't negotiated a new trading arrangement with the European Union in 2 years, and you said this yourself, Nigel, we revert to what are called World Trade Organization terms. Do you know what that means? Every day we export nearly 2,000 cars to Europe. Currently they enter Europe tariff-free. When America and Japan try to sell to Europe, they pay a 10% tariff. We would start paying the same tariff if we exited and were on WTO terms. Do you know what the tariff would be on fruit? It would be 22%.
All right, now look.
Damaging our economy is not
all
going
right,
to help
everybody,
us.
calm down. Everybody, calm down.
It's not going to help us.
Quieten down, please, panel, because otherwise the audience will get so cross they'll walk out. They'll do a Brexit. And I would ask you just to take it in turns so that everybody can hear what you say. And let's go on to a second question, which is about the economy, which is what you've been gradually coming round to. Just before I do that, I want to tell the audience at home we've got 3 question times during the next week. Michael Gove is on his own against a question time audience on Nottingham, or with, I should say. There's a regular Thursday question time in York, and there's another question time with David Cameron from Milton Keynes on Sunday. And then there's a kind of week's pause while we vote. And then we're going to be in Preston on June the 30th. So if you want to come to any of those programmes, the details are there on the screen. Now, let's try and have a civilised debate and go on to a question from Dean Onslow, please. Dean Onslow.
The Eurozone seems to be lurching from one economic crisis to another. Should we not distance ourselves from future economic risk?
The Eurozone lurching from one economic crisis to another. So Hilary Benn, it rather picks up with the point that you were making when I stopped you, so you could pick this question
David,
up.
thanks very much. Look, the most important point is we are not in the euro. We're not. And it was the last Labour government that decided we're not going to join the euro, and I can see no circumstances in which we ever would. So, yes, there are problems for the Eurozone, but it's a demonstration, actually, Nigel, of our sovereignty that we didn't join the euro. We're not in the Schengen free passport area. We're not affected by ever closer union. Now, we are the 5th strongest economy in the world. But you decried, Chris, you decried the European market. You said it was fading and falling. 44% of our exports go to the European Union. It is our biggest customer. And the idea that if we walk away from Europe and then try and ring them up afterwards and say, can you give us a good deal? Do we actually think that France and Germany will give us a better deal outside than they give themselves inside the European Union? I don't think so.
What about the damage that's been done, though? What about, and Nigel Farage referred to it, and I think Chris Grayling did, the damage that's being done now within Europe by the Eurozone countries and the problems they have? Are you saying that will have no impact at all on Britain, and we wouldn't therefore be better trying it outside?
It is having a big impact on the European countries that are particularly affected, where there are high levels of unemployment. That is the result of them having chosen to join the Eurozone. But coming out, not only do we have to renegotiate our trade deal with Europe, we have to renegotiate our trade deal with 53 other countries in the world that we have deals with currently, precisely because we're part of the largest single market in the world. And that is why all the economists and all of the studies have said we will be worse off, and I don't see how that helps the country one little bit.
Chris Grayling.
The key point that you're missing when you talk about our trade with the European Union is that we buy far more from them than they buy from us. We have the most monumental trade deficit with the European Union. And in what world will the German government say to its car makers, who sell 1 million cars a year in the United Kingdom, we're going to restrict your access to your most important market? In what world are the French government going to say to the French farmers, and down on the south coast you know all about the French farmers and how they can get stroppy and blockade ports and the rest, in what world are the French government going to say to their farmers, we're going to put the price of your products in the United Kingdom up so you don't sell there anymore? You know, it's not going to happen. We in the United Kingdom will, outside the European Union, represent 17% of the EU's exports. Now, those of you in the audience in business, in what world would you go to war with your biggest customer? It's not going to happen.
Are you saying there'll be no tariffs raised against Britain exporting to Europe?
Well, why would the Europeans
Because I heard
impose
Nigel
tariffs on
Farage
Toyota?
say, you said 5% might happen, didn't you? And it was cheaper than paying into the EU.
The reason that we will have a free trade agreement is they will have to accept putting tariffs on the goods they sell to us. And we buy more from them than they buy from us. And it will cost EU jobs if they damage their access to our market, which is why they won't do it.
Nigel Farage, you seem to think there is a possibility of tariffs being raised,
David,
but you said 5%.
What I'm saying is this. What did we join just over 40 years ago, and why did we join it? We joined what was sold as a common market. Anybody here aged over 58, although they were warned by Hilary's dad that it was all a con job, and he was right, and he really was, but we joined a common market. My mum and dad voted for tariff-free access. David, that was the point. A post-war world, a post-Wall Street crash world of very, very high barriers, particularly to manufactured goods being sold between countries. So we signed up to get rid of tariffs. And that was great. And in the short term, there's a strong argument to say the common market was good for the British economy back in the 1970s.
Can you come to the question I put to you?
However,
you accept there might be 5% tariffs.
The argument that is now being made by our two Remain panellists
out of 5
is well, just shows you how things have moved on, doesn't it? In the old days, it was only me, so I'm delighted to have some company.
Well, then, why don't you answer that question about your family? Why aren't you very positive about immigrants? No, I mean...
I think you're beginning to bore people with this, I really do.
You've never answered it. If no one brings you to task, Nigel, you never answer the question. You're just avoiding it.
Eddie, we believe in sensible, controlled immigration, all right?
Never answer the question.
So can we please not hear that nonsense again?
You're from an immigrant family and you just don't care about immigrants, so...
That really is childish.
No, that's you. That's your family.
Nigel...
Can we answer this question?
Nigel, can you just answer the question? I want to repeat it because you haven't answered. Are you saying there might be 5% tariffs put on British exports?
We joined for tariff-free access to the European market.
Yeah, we've got that.
40 years on, we have tariff-free access to the single market in a world where tariffs that were up there are now down there. The costs of being part of the single market cartel far outweigh any savings from tariffs, even if tariffs were put on our goods, the total cost of that will be lower than our net contribution. So my argument is the worst case scenario is better than where we are today. And as Chris quite rightly says, the German car manufacturers will go on selling their cars in this country, and I'm going to go on drinking French wine, and we'll go on doing business with each other.
All right. The man up there at the back. You're at the very back.
It's not actually about, is it 1% of GDP? It's actually, how do you as a country want to govern yourself, and do you want to tie yourself to a certain number of other countries that happen to be nearby, or do you actually want to trade with the world?
But we can do both. The truth, sir, the truth is we can do both. The idea that we're facing a choice between either trading with Europe or the rest of the world. In the last 5 years, what's happened to our exports to China? They have doubled. What's happened to our trade with Commonwealth countries? It's gone up enormously. It is not a competition between the two. Now, Nigel said a moment ago, even if there were tariffs, then that would be more than compensated for by the contribution we wouldn't have to make to the budget. Are you suggesting, Nigel, that you would then use that money to compensate businesses in Britain that were facing the cost of a tariff. Is that your policy?
Well, Hilary, it isn't just about businesses, it's about consumers. And why don't you come clean with the public? That when they buy goods from outside the European Union, if you buy a Japanese motor car, you pay a 10% tariff. If you buy kids shoes for school, you pay a 17% tariff if they come from outside the European Union. What we've done here, we've inextricably linked ourselves economically to this Fortress Europe idea. And what I want, Hilary, is us to be a global trading nation with cheaper prices for our consumers.
That's what I want. Yes. I'll come to it. All right. Now, wait. The woman there, you had your hand up there.
Mr Benn said it's not about sovereignty. It is about sovereignty. It's about democracy. You said...
I didn't say it was about sovereignty. I didn't say that.
It is about our crown waters, our fishing industry, our farmers who get subsidised to put their land aside so that they don't make the food that we can eat. Our fishing industry, they were told to they were given subsidies to burn their boats so that the fishing quotas could be given elsewhere.
All right. I want to... I'll come to you next. I want to hear, we've had a number, I know you're 50-50 Remain, or pretty well 50-50 Remain and 50 exit. I want to hear from some Remainers who believe that what is happening is you, yes, indeed.
I'm not British citizen, and this really, really scares me. I've lived here for a long time, and what I hear tonight actually worries and scares me. The EU was created originally by 6 countries, after the war, for peace and for stability. Where is that now? UK joined later, joined in 73, hopefully for the same principles. Where are those principles tonight? Where is your search for stability, for I don't know, to keep those ideas going? And what I've heard tonight, actually why I'm scared now, is what I've heard tonight is certain things that were told, were said in 1933 in Germany. Or not at all.
Allison Pearson. Can
I come in at any point?
It's all about immigrations, and that really scares me because it's not about that. And those were used in 1933 in Nazi Germany.
It's not the United Kingdom that's doing this. Okay, let's go back.
So who's doing it?
No, all right, can you let Alison answer?
So it's the European Union, it's Brussels. Yes, it is Brussels, because they are possessed by this ideal. Since the Eurozone was created, if we look across Europe, Europe is in a terrible economic mess. And Eddie used the word earlier, humanity. The men, the rich, white, old men, white men who run Brussels have imposed austerity and terrible conditions. Southern Europe is, there are shortages of medicine. There's incredibly high.
Well, they got themselves in problem. They voted to come back in.
So this idea of peace and stability, if you look across Europe, you see lots of countries going to the far right, going to the far left. This is not caused by the UK. This is caused by Brussels, which has not listened to the will of the European people. And in 2005, France and the Netherlands voted on the European Constitution, and both countries resoundingly rejected the European Constitution. And Brussels didn't listen. They didn't listen when the Greeks had a referendum and said, "Please don't impose any more austerity on us." And the head of the European Union.
Who is Brussels?
Please.
No, I'm sorry, but saying Brussels is not right, because who is Brussels? We are all Brussels. They are all people. They are people.
All right. Can we have a little silence? Eddie Izzard and Nigel, if you would not interrupt him, he promises not to interrupt you next time.
It's a deal.
Eddie.
It's a deal.
It's a truth.
We'll answer that question of you later. Let us not forget, we have to head towards a world where all 7 billion people have a fair chance. We have to head in that direction, because otherwise despair is the fuel of terrorism, hope is the fuel of civilization. We've got to be putting hope into the world. We, the United Kingdom, we used to kill each other in all sorts of wars, and we gradually came together to live together and work together in some shape or form. What that form is, Scotland is still deciding, but they will peel off. If there's a Brexit, they will be going, and then Wales could well be going. That they won't. You're sure, Alison? You're sure? How can you be sure?
They have a
No, they can't afford to go.
They will do that. They will wait their time and then they will peel off. But the point is that what we're doing in Europe is the hardest thing that's ever been done. No continent has ever done this before. This is not the American model. 2,500 years of murder from Alexander the Great to World War II, and then we said, let's not do it again. And it's not scaremongering because World War I was not called World War I. It was called the Great War, the war to end all wars. And then there was another one. Yep. So that's why we set up the European Union in the first place. Whatever name it was, we were trying to make sure we were reaching out like this and not like this. And I feel the Brexiters are all doing this, and I am doing this. That's why I'm running marathons. That's why I'm transgender. I came out 31 years ago. I'm trying to be brave. I'm touring France in French. I'm touring Germany in German. These are positive things. I was there on D-Day, playing the shows, celebrating 72 years of peace and commemorating people who fell on that day.
And what do you say to the question Dean Onslow asked? That one? No, Dean Onslow's question was that the Eurozone lurches from one economic crisis to another. Shouldn't we
There's a recession. There was a recession on. Did we just all lose memories? Remember that recession happened? And it goes in there, and we're trying to make it work.
All right.
We're trying to make it work. We've got to head forwards and upwards.
OK, Chris Grayling. I'll come to you in a moment. Chris Grayling.
Well, I mean, my view very straightforwardly on this is that the European Union is being left behind. It is a diminishing share of the world economy. If you look at where the exciting developments are happening around the world, they are in Asia, they're in the Americas, they're actually in the Commonwealth. It is a nonsense that we, as the principal country in the Commonwealth, the lead country in the Commonwealth, cannot even negotiate a free trade agreement with our own Commonwealth partners. And the reality is that we will carry on... We'll carry on trading with the rest of Europe, as we do now, because we buy more from them than they buy from us. But it is a reality that we have a trade surplus with the rest of the world and a huge deficit in Europe. The opportunities are elsewhere. Let us not shut ourselves off from them in an economic bloc that is going backwards.
Right.
I seem to be a rare beast in the room. I haven't made my decision. I've got my postal vote with me in my handbag. And perhaps I'm the only one that's not being fought at from both sides. But what I actually want you to do is give me clear guidance about what could make a difference to my life and what could make a difference to me and my grandchildren and help me put the cross in the box tonight.
And do you not feel you get this from hearing people talk about it?
We're trying. We are trying.
I spend my time thinking, is that a plausible comment they've just made? Is that feasible? Is that viable? Is there a competent and confident leadership after the referendum? I regret, at present, I do not know, and it may be a tactical vote or purely at the last minute, close my eyes, and I feel utterly ashamed to say I cannot make my mind up, and I want you to help me.
So I think the key thing that you should bear in mind, on June the 23rd, we live in a country that has given away and is continuing to give away and will carry on giving away more and more of its ability to govern itself. And I want my children to live a life in a country, and I hope you want your children and grandchildren to live in a country that looks after its own national interests, is free to take decisions in its own national interest, is not in a place where most of its laws are made in another place, and where we have no control over things that make a material difference to all of our lives.
And would you agree in talking to that woman that the important thing in this is that the information given should be as near as possible accurate as far as you know?
Well, we should try and explain the issues as carefully as we can.
All right.
That's what I think. It's for our different perspectives tonight. We're all trying to explain the issues as we see them.
All right.
We just disagree.
Polly Radcliffe, let's have your question then.
Given Sarah Wollaston's statement that it simply isn't true that Brexit will unlock £350 million a week, can we believe a word the Leave camp say? And
you'll know that the $350 million a week claim, all of which apparently, according to the commercial that I saw on television just half an hour ago, is all going to be spent on the NHS, or can all be spent on the NHS. Some people think and say this simply isn't true. Perhaps you should answer that.
Well, let me explain what the number is. It is a gross figure. It is the official Office of National Statistics figure for our weekly contribution to the European Union, table 9.9 of the ONS Pink Book 2014. We get about half of that money back with strings attached, in the form of grants that are decided in Brussels and in the form of a rebate that is constantly being argued about by our European partners.
Sorry, what are the strings attached to the rebate? The rebate is money that doesn't go there.
Well, the rebate is calculated varies on a year by year basis.
What are the strings attached to it?
No, it's calculated a year later and netted against
but the Treasury gets it.
Yes,
I don't understand something. You get $350 million a week you pay, $95 million a week. goes back to the Treasury.
Yes, it's
so how can
calculated
that be
a year.
spent on the NHS? They can spend it now if they want
Well,
to.
can I finish? The other half, which is about £10 billion a year, is money that is spent elsewhere in Europe. That is money that could be spent on our priorities here. We've said in the campaign we think that we'd be able to release £100 million a week, £5 billion a year extra for the health service, as well as having money spare to remove VAT on fuel bills and do some other things.
Do you regret that 350 billion, which has been roundly criticised by people?
It's the overall figure. If you look at a job advert...
If I give you if I ask for £100 from you, I say, give me £100, Chris, and you give me £100. Actually, I don't need that 100. I'll give you 25 back. Have you given me 75 or have you given me 100?
If you apply for a job... If you apply for a job and the salary in that job is set out, it doesn't say £30,000 from which we'll net off your national insurance and we'll take off money for your income tax.
Yeah,
and by the way, you're a member of a pension scheme, so it's actually £23,000. The advert says the salary is £30,000 a year. Our contribution to the European Union is £350 million a week, of which we get some back and some we don't get
Hilary
back.
Benn.
Well, Chris, you've struggled to try and explain away what is clearly untrue. And look, for me, when the chair, a Conservative MP, who's the chair of the Health Select Committee, as Sarah Wollaston did yesterday, comes out and says, I can no longer go along with this because it simply isn't true, that tells us something about the character of the Leave campaign. But I also wanted to respond to the point that you made, madam, in looking for guidance as to how to vote. Because, look, I'm a father of 4 kids and a grandfather. And for me, this is a decision about the future for our children and our grandchildren.
Everybody always says that.
Disagree. Well, I'm going to say it.
I mean, everybody's got children and grandchildren.
Yeah, but the point I'm going to make, David, I know it's nothing special. I know it's nothing special, but Chris is absolutely wrong when he says that the way to safeguard our future is to isolate ourselves from 27 of our nearest neighbours. If we're going to deal with the challenges we face in this century and help our children and our grandchildren to do that, we have to work in collaboration with our neighbours to tackle climate change, the threats from terrorism. And I was really sorry, Alison, when the Brussels bombings were taking place, you tweeted about Brexit, because I tell you, when our neighbours are being blown up by terrorists, we should stand in solidarity with them. We should not run away because we are stronger by doing so together.
Sorry, what did she tweet? What did she tweet?
You made a reference to Brexit in that rather infamous tweet, Alison, didn't you?
Well, I
You
think
did.
That, I think
Yes, you
I
did.
think that when we have other countries have very weak security, what happens is that people from those countries, because they're in the EU, can come to our country.
What did you say in the tweet? Sorry, for those who don't know what you said.
I said that Brussels, which is the capital of the EU, has just seen this, the de facto capital of the EU is also this nest of jihadists. That's what I said. And we have also just seen recently...
We are British people. We don't run and hide from stuff like this. We didn't in the 30s. We're not going to do now. We can stand shoulder to shoulder with the Belgians and the French.
Recently, we have found out that 2 of the ringleaders of the Paris bombing and the Brussels atrocities had come to the West Midlands and have come through Kent, I think, actually. So that we are not safe about
So
this.
Brexit would make us safer.
Brexit would make us safer, yes, absolutely.
How?
Because they wouldn't have one of these, Hilary. They wouldn't have a European Union passport and be able to travel freely. That's the point.
What makes us safer is cooperating with our neighbours to exchange information. To support our security services and the police. That's what will make us safer.
OK, let's hear from some more members of our lively audience. You, sir, with spectacles on there. That's you, yes.
Just on this point of the 350 million figure, the real, I think, problem that's been covered up there is actually that we can't put that money back into our NHS or anywhere else straight away because actually...
Exactly.
Actually, I mean, from a Remain point of view, actually, you'd lose... That money is offset by what you'd lose in GDP and what you'd lose in tax returns from immigration. So actually, the gain you get is offset by what you do if you leave.
So,
OK.
can I...
yeah, briefly.
Just quickly, exactly what you said, the 350 million, they give us the half back of our money, but they decide where it goes. So, for example...
They don't decide where the rebate goes.
They absolutely decide where it goes.
Where the rebate goes? They don't say where to spend it.
They do.
It goes to the Treasury.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, really? What do they say?
No, they say, we'll give this grant to the CBI, we'll give this grant here. So, say, for example...
Nigel, just to fact-check. subject here for us on the Brexit side. Is it true that... Nigel, sorry, no, just do my bidding for once.
Yeah.
Can you just fact-check what she said? Is it true that the rebate, that the EU tells us where to spend the rebate?
No.
I've never heard you say that.
No, it doesn't. But the rebate is up for constant discussion, and our rebate keeps being chipped away at as the price of other deals. Look, can we just get to the truth of this? 350 million a week is wrong. It's higher than that. It's higher than that. If you look, but I think the trouble we've got here is we're expressing things in billions and hundreds of millions, and people get confused. Fact, absolute fact, from the 2014 official yearly statistics, cross-checked with the EU. We pay £55 million a day as a contribution. Some of that, David, is the rebate, which doesn't go, but our gross contribution is £55 million a day. In rebates and money that comes back in terms of grants and agricultural support, £21 million a day gets knocked off that £55 million. I think maybe the easiest thing for us to do on the Brexit camp is just to talk about the net figure. And the net figure is £34 million every single day, £10 billion a year, and I say that is too much, and we should spend that money here in our own country on our own people.
Okay. Right. Now, hold on. I want to hear from you. I'm going to hear from some more members of our audience. We've opened up this discussion, yes.
So,
not too long, if you don't mind, just make it sharp.
That's a very small proportion of the total size of the British economy. I don't think we'd notice it, really. And not to the extent that you seem to think that we would. It's still a very small proportion. And if you're right, Mr Farage, if you're right, why is it that every time it looks like the Leave campaign is edging ahead, that the pound is falling? And
it's not.
Well, it appears to be. It does. Because the Remain campaign seems to strengthen. That's why.
Can we please? This is utter rubbish. The pound has been falling since July 2014.
Because you may be taking us out of the EU.
Since the end of March, when Brexit looked likely, the pound has risen by 4%.
I don't think
to this baloney.
you were a trader once.
I was.
Speculation on currencies actually doesn't get you very far because it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. A woman there, and then I'll come to you. The woman there on the right there.
What is not credible is that people in the Leave campaign, like Nigel Farage and Chris Grayling, would invest that money in the NHS. Nigel Farage doesn't even believe in the NHS. Chris Grayling prevails over the most devastating so-called Andrew Lansley reform, which is basically cuts and privatising of bits of the NHS.
My local NHS, and I will carry on doing so.
But Nigel wants an insurance-based system.
Well,
Hillary doesn't want
you do.
Hillary, you do want an insurance-based system.
You do. Do you know what I'd like to do? Do you know what I'd like to do with the 10 billion? I would like that 10 billion to be spent helping the communities in Britain that your government damaged so badly by opening up the doors to 8 and then 10 former communist countries. And what people need, Hillary, are schools, hospitals, GPs. That's what they need.
All right, let's have a
I just want to say something.
Silence for Eddie Izzard.
The governor of the Bank of England says we will most probably go into recession. The IFS, the OECD, it's the World Trade Organization. Barack Obama says don't leave. Hillary Clinton backs him up. And Donald Trump is the only one on their side, and he is to the right of Attila the Hun. So that is not someone that you should be following. Donald Trump is the only one. You don't hear this economic argument. They're just talking about immigration, again, immigration.
No, we're not. But okay. You said at the back
you're
there.
not, but normally you're
at the back. You at the back.
The question was about Sarah Wollaston's changing her mind, her decision. It's rather depressing that she changed her decision because of the way the campaign was being run and not on the issues themselves, or that was how it came over.
Yes. All right. And you, sir, there. The man there in the grey-blue shirt, yes. And then the woman in front of you after you, yes. You're bald-headed and blue shirt, yeah. Nothing against you, just how to identify you.
Separated at birth. In some regards, it doesn't matter what Nigel thinks, because Nigel's not elected. And with respect to Alison, if I don't want to agree with her views, I don't have to buy the Telegraph. If I disagree with Eddie's views, I can turn him off. But what, for me, is the crux of the matter is sovereignty. And the two elected ones, and there's things about both you I dislike, I'll be quite honest, but if I dislike you enough, I can vote you out.
Yeah.
I can't have the same effect with a European setup. So if our laws have been made in Westminster, I can get rid of you.
Vote Nigel out. You can't vote Nigel out. That's quite...
Well, you can vote me out of a job by voting for Brexit. I'm the turkey that'll vote for Christmas.
Well, you can vote that.
You know, absolutely.
And the woman in front of you. The woman in front of you there.
My problem with the Brexit campaign is not so much the figures. I think figures can be manipulated by either side. I think the problem is, and it's the same with the Remain campaign to an extent, it's all if. If we come out, this might happen. Well, I, like the lady at the front, am also not decided, and I am swayed by some of the Leave arguments, but I still don't really know what will happen if we do leave.
What's your hesitation about? Is it about whether immigration would be better controlled? Is it about the economy?
I think
whether there'd be a recession?
I think the biggest one is about the economy, and all the Remain campaigners say if we stay in, the economy will be better, and all the Leave obviously say the opposite. But which one do you believe, and what figures do you believe?
No, listen to her. She's made her point. That's what we do. No, you've all made your point several times. We take your point, hear what you said. I want to take another question. We've only got about 8 minutes left. Belinda Walker, and this is relevant to what was being said by two former Prime Ministers, John Major and Tony Blair, today in Belfast. Belinda Walker, let's just have your question.
Yes. Will an unintended consequence of Brexit be the breakup of the United Kingdom?
Will an unintended consequence of Brexit be the breakup of the United Kingdom? Eddie Izzard, you start on this.
Yes, I think so. And Nicola Sturgeon said she wouldn't immediately do a referendum, but just look, I was up there. I was campaigning. I said to the Scottish people, please don't go. I got a lot of hatred for it, but I said, please don't go. But they're very positive on Europe. So if there is an exit, they will work out their time and then they will leave. And Wales could do that as well. I mean, and then north of England could split up. I mean, there's no logic in the... If you think about the logic of the direction of Brexit, I'm trying to say we've got to go forward and try and make Europe work. We've got to stay in to try and make it work. It's for the future of humanity. Now, if you exit, you cut it down, then Scotland could well go, and then Wales might be there, but then the north of England would say... where do you go in the future? There's no future except getting smaller in the Little Englander. The Nigel Farage Little Englander, ex-immigrant coming in. I don't know where that goes.
All right. Chris Grayling. Little Englander.
The first thing is,
are you a Little Englander?
I'm not a Little Englander. And my ancestry goes back 700 years in this country.
Well, so does mine.
Well, there you go, then.
Well,
why
mum was born in Ashford.
insistent on your sovereignty, then?
No, but the point is we're trying to pull it. We are joined part of a club to make the whole economy better. Our economy is better if we're inside, and if we come out.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
All right. Try to avoid pantomime here. Chris Grayling.
The first thing to say is the Scottish people, thank goodness, well done for campaigning, Eddie, voted to stay part of the United Kingdom. We are one United Kingdom. We vote as one United Kingdom. Every single citizen, from Stornoway to St Ives, will vote with the same weight about all of our futures in or out of the European Union. I say thank goodness Scotland didn't vote for independence. If it had done, it would have been in the middle of the most profound financial crisis now because of the collapse in the oil price. And actually, at the Scottish elections, the nationalists went down, and the most recent polls show that support for nationalism in Scotland has gone down. We are one country. I'm proud to be one country. We should carry on being one country. And it's just worth touching briefly on the Northern Ireland point. We've had a common travel area with Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland since 1923. Those who suggest that somehow that is going to disappear because we leave the European Union are simply not right. Our relationship with the Republic of Ireland is very different to any other EU country. It will carry on as it did before.
All right. Well, I know we're not meant to do... You're not meant to be doing blue on blue, but David Cameron, the Prime Minister, is worried that Brexit would lead to a second Scottish independence referendum. John Major says the plain, uncomfortable truth, I quote him, is that the unity of the United Kingdom itself is on the ballot paper in 2 weeks' time. They're both wrong.
Well, I'm afraid I think they're both wrong, and the most recent opinion polling in Scotland during this campaign, in the last few days, at a time when the Brexit campaign has been gaining momentum, has shown actually a fall in support for Scottish separation.
All right. Allison Pearson.
No, going back to what Chris said, I mean, the simple economics of it is because the oil price has fallen, Scotland can't afford to leave. I'm Welsh, and I actually think that Wales might be with Brexit. Just want to quickly come back.
You think Wales might be with Brexit?
I think Wales might be with Brexit. Yes, a lot of sounding.
And Scotland, you think?
I'm Welsh, and I don't think they will.
Okay. Yeah, just say why. Say why. We better hear your view. You think
I just
Wales
think
won't
that,
remain?
you know, we've been isolated for so long and we're part of Europe, and I think we're better together. We're stronger together.
I think all is better together. Eddie's going on about, this lovely harmonious thing.
Is that not what we're trying to get to, Alison? Surely. You may not be, but I'm trying to do it.
But it's not happening.
Well, we've got to try harder, not run away from it. Running and hiding won't work.
All right, Hilary Benn, you'll go.
It is Grayling's a hypocrite to say, I didn't want Scotland to be on their own, but yet he wants the UK to be on their own.
All right, Hilary Benn.
The truth about the European Union is it is an astonishing achievement given what we used to do to each other. You only have to visit the graveyards of the First and Second World Wars to know how important this creation is. And yes, it's difficult, and sometimes we don't get everything that we want, but it's a lot better than fighting each other. To answer your question directly, it could well lead to the breakup of the United Kingdom. Now, we just spent the time in that referendum arguing in Scotland we are better and stronger together. And now we're on a panel with 3 people saying, you know what, we're better and stronger, not together, breaking up. And that is not the right approach to take. And the nightmare, we leave the European Union, the United Kingdom breaks up, heaven forbid, Boris Johnson becomes Prime Minister, President Le Pen wins in France, and Donald Trump in America, although I think that won't happen because people will be wise enough to vote for a candidate called Hillary.
One of the key points is that we live and we are citizens of a country called the United Kingdom. We do not live in a country yet called the European Union. It may well be that it becomes something like a country, but we are within the United Kingdom.
But we
one
didn't in
single
the old
nation.
days. We used to be separate nations and we came together. That's what the world's got to be about. We've got to head in that direction.
Nigel Farage.
Where's the leadership?
Belinda Walker asks, will an unintended consequence, or maybe it's an intended consequence, be the breakup of the United Kingdom?
I don't believe it will. Although I have to say, as a Brexiteer, to see Tony Blair back in the fray, telling us what we should think and what we should do, yippee, bring it on. Let's see more of Blair, because his credibility is just about zero. The idea that Wales somehow is in love with the European Union, you're all in for a shock. Wales is every bit as Eurosceptic as the rest of England. And I also think in Scotland, you'll be very surprised. This idea that Scotland is massively pro-EU and England's anti-EU, what you'll find is the results won't actually be that different. And the idea that Nicola Sturgeon is going to hold a second referendum on separation from the United Kingdom with oil at below $50 a barrel, you may as well go and drink moonshine. It ain't going to happen.
OK. Right, now we're just running out of time.
She's going to wait her time, but that is a huge problem. They get 245 million net receivers in Wales, so that's why Wales should stay. 100 million goes into...
All right.
Yeah, I know, but that's a positive thing they get from the European Union.
There's a woman in the second row here who's had her hand up right through the programme. And just before we end, I'll give you... All right, you argue with each other, but let's hear from her. Just 10 seconds, very briefly, if you would.
Thank you, very briefly. Eddie, you've been banging on at Nigel about, him being an immigrant. Excuse me, Nigel is an Englishman. He's an English gentleman. He embraces the English culture.
His family came through.
Wait, I said we would give her 10 seconds. You've nearly had your time.
Sorry, can I not say more?
Yeah, I told you.
I can do a bit more.
No, not much more.
No.
5 seconds more.
So, it's about the English culture. What's happening... the British, sorry, all right, the British culture.
Oh.
It's
Do you mean English or British?
Our UK culture, as we know it, as it is now, if we allow ourselves to just keep being invaded, we are getting diluted.
All right, fine. We've got to stop. I'm sorry. And I apologise to all of you who have your hands up, and I know, I'm sorry, sir, not to be able to bring you in, because we only have an hour's up. We have more programmes, though, because we're in Nottingham next Wednesday for a special programme with Michael Gove and a Question Time audience. We have David Cameron in Milton Keynes on Sunday next, with an audience, not this coming Sunday, the Sunday after. And those programmes are at 6:45 on BBC One, not at our usual time. And in between that, next Thursday, if you can keep up with this, which I barely can, our regular time after the 10 o'clock news, we've got a question time coming from York. That's next Thursday. And in the far, far, far distant future, after the referendum, we're going to be in Preston on June the 30th. Now, if you'd like to come to any of those audiences, the website address is there, the telephone number 0330 123 9988. If you're listening on 5 Live, as you know, the debate continues on Question Time, Extra Time, and no doubt it'll be very lively, but here the debate comes to an end, sadly for most of us. My thanks to our panel and to all of you who came here to Folkestone to take part. So until next Wednesday at 6:45 with Michael Gove from Question Time, good night.
With Andrew Neil next on BBC One, Jerry Springer and documentary filmmaker Michael Moore, plus consumer champion Martin Lewis and journalist Quentin Letts among the guests this week.